Okay. Okay, we're live. It says we're live. Welcome, guys. Mark and Tyler. So people will possibly recognize you from the other streams. We're also on the Facebook group, the Command Z one. See what kind of traction we get there. Yeah. So how's it going? What's going on?
No, very well, man. Just celebrated my 40th.
Oh wow! Happy
Oh,
birthday! Shit.
birthday, Mark.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. How was it?
Oh, it was amazing.
You look
Went and
way older
saw
now. Don't look any older at all. You look pretty young. Went and saw what?
an amazing Canadian musician by the name of Ariel Posen last Tuesday.
Ah, what kind of music?
Blues rock, kind of with a folk bend in there. It was cool
That
because he's
sounds
one of the
nice.
greatest living guitar players, I think, and it was a room of like 200 people.
Ooh, nice. Did you get to talk to him and stuff afterward?
I bought a T-shirt, but I was didn't talk to him.
Ah, yeah, it can be weird sometimes in those situations. It just depends. I used to just haunt like the certain clubs, one in Eugene and sometimes in Minneapolis, but one in Eugene, Oregon. You could kind of hang out, and there was the place was had a park buildings on I think one side and then a parking lot and just streets, so there was nowhere for them to really hide. So at some point they were going to be loading the gear, or they had to exit like out in the back. So I would just hang out forever, and then go accost them in the, in the parking lot. But I had a good time. I got into some free shows and got to meet different bands. But yeah, I don't know
Yeah, the
if you
music
know
world
about.
is so small when you start talking to people.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Then it's good to get over the image thing. If you have a certain idea about people, to actually connect it to a real person and get rid of the fantasies about them. Yeah. It can be disheartening too, but it's cool. So we were going to talk. I put on there, how can simple body movements overcome stress, anxiety, and depression. I guess that's kind of like what we always talk about. But then in the description, I thought we could go a little deeper. Mark, you had mentioned some stuff about Robert Anton Wilson. Tyler, you had mentioned some of the long term, sort of being curious about some of the long term results of this type of stuff. The Radical Undoing breath and body work. And then I mentioned, when you said that, a few things came to mind for me. Like, again, I don't like to use any words like this, but it's kind of a useful word, synchronicity. And maybe we should define that and discuss it a little bit, because I remember when I first started going really deep with the undoing work, that there were days and weeks and sometimes even months of time where everything seemed to flow and it made sense, and like kind of operating on this faith level where I didn't have to solve anything. I wasn't trying to manipulate anything. I was just more observing and enjoying the flow of life, and everything that needed to get done got done, and all these people were dropping into my life. So that's what I mean when I say synchronicities. I don't know, maybe there's a better word for it. That word gets used in such silly ways, and then people are like, "Oh, look at the clock and it's 11:11." Wow, and get lost in that whole thing. Or how the new age kind of folks are always saying like, today this is a time when people were really waking up, so you're struggling right now, but stick with it, and like they're saying that every week. You know what I mean? So I don't mean that, but I don't even really know what they're talking about anymore when they say that stuff. But it's interesting to see.
Actually, we had a
Uh,
really funny experience at that concert I was just telling you guys about.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
share.
two. So the opening act, he was just a guy with a guitar, and I'm sitting there, and I say to both my friends that are my brother and my friend who are there with, God, that's got to be so terrifying to just be up there with no bass player, no drummer, no nothing, just a guy and his guitar. And not 2 minutes later, between songs, he goes, "Man, this is terrifying being up here without a bass player or a drummer." And then the opening act comes out, and we're all music nerds, right? So we're looking at his gear and the amps that he's using. We're trying to figure out, like, why has he got 4 amps there? And then we figured out the one's got to be a backup. So he's got 2 heads and a cab, and they're running through each speaker, so he's got a mic separately. Second song in, one of the heads blows, and he has to use the practice amp.
So you said it was like it was set up wrong, you mean?
It wasn't set up wrong, just with tube amps. Sometimes a tube will blow, and you need
okay.
an amp for a backup just to make sure you can continue through the show. And right after we finish talking about that, amp blows. He's got to use the backup.
Yeah. Now you talked about so also in the description I mentioned so some of the deeper experiences of the Radical Undoing and Neo-Reichian breath and bodywork, including synchronicities, prayer, presence, and beholding the kingdom of God within and at hand. I guess that's kind of a tall order. But Mark, when you were doing the teacher training, there was some discussion. Now it's slightly vague, but there was like maybe weeks at a time when you started doing the silent presence, the fake meditation thing. Which I see as like related to or connected to the sense and feel, the thing that we do at the end of the sessions. Which also the sense and feel is not found in other forms of the Reichian work. Is that correct, Tyler? As far as I know, it's not.
Nope. Yeah, never came across that in any form. 8 years, a lot of different modalities.
And do you have maybe a headphone mic or something like that? Because your mic is cutting in and out. I'm not sure why that is, but
Is that better?
yeah, maybe. Yeah, try talking.
Yeah, that might have fixed it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it seems like it's not crackling anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, 8 years, nothing close to sense and feel. Which
Mhm.
now it blows my mind. I can't fathom doing a session and opening up so much bodily awareness and not putting that to use and anchoring it. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, the sense and feel thing is totally mind blowing, and I still haven't put together like a whole workshop on it, and I don't know if I will because it seems like it has to go with the undoing stuff, and it's kind of, I guess, like a live in-person workshop where you could work on that kind of thing every day would be pretty cool. If I geared the like an in-person workshop around that type of awareness and do some sensory exercises with it and stuff with the emotions and how to go deeper with it. But basically, for people watching who don't know, at the end of a Radical Undoing breathing and body movement session, you spend 10 or 15 minutes or longer saying out loud everything you sense and feel in the body with no voluntary movements and no interpretations. Maybe that sounds easy, but and for some people it does click right away. Some people do kind of snap right into like this observation, but for some folks it takes like some correction where they start going off into abstraction, like it'll first be kind of related to the body, and then it will be like kind of a story about something related to the body, and then it drifts off. So you have to correct that, but once you get it locked in, this awareness where your being or whatever, the observer, is actually clear and just noticing events that are occurring in the body, like movements or heat or twitches or convulsions or pleasant or unpleasant sensations or an itch or the fabric of the blanket if your hand's laying down like that. That kind of stuff. When it's locked in, then it's like hard to go into abstraction from there. So that's a huge thing in and of itself, because you become aware of what's actually going on, and you then have a new awareness of how when you're not clear and observing what's actually going on, when you're inventing things, when you're overlaying experiences and reality with interpretations.
And the really cool thing about this work and the sense and feel is you start to bring that into your day-to-day life instead of this is where I do undoing, and this is where I live. It all just flows together.
Yeah. And then the silent presence, I like to call it silent presence. Jesse Lee calls it silent prayer. You know, Israel Regardi had something similar called the practice of the presence of God, which I thought was too complicated. Or fake meditation, what I called it when I first kind of arrived at that. Or like or pray without ceasing. So it means like be aware, keep the mind where the body is at all times. And then things can flow, like then things can make sense, you know. And actually, maybe something fun we could do. Let me see. We could watch. Let me see, and I could test this out. Oops. We could watch that Hyatt video that all of us have watched a million times. Okay, let's see here. Why most people are losers. You guys remember it, yeah?
Every single word, yeah.
I know. Yeah. You watched it a bunch of times, but it's useful to repeat things, to watch things or read things a bunch of times, especially if it's...
Most people are losers.
Okay, so let's see. Maybe the screen share function, we'll test it out here. And then we can discuss some of the points in that. Present. Share screen. Oh, sharing screen is easiest with 2 monitors. Works best on a good computer. Share audio. Okay. Chrome tab. There we go. Share tab audio. Okay. So we'll go like that. And I can't see you guys anymore, but
We can see the video now.
okay. So we will go. We'll press play. And I was in the room for this. For anyone watching that isn't aware of that, so when I was working with Hyatt, and I was down there for a workshop, and then we went early, and we're there for filming of a couple DVDs. And this is a clip from the conversation we were having there, and I find it extremely useful even after all these years. There were many things I thought I understood when he was saying them at the time, and now I realize, like, no, dude, I totally didn't understand what he was saying on the deeper level. So let's go ahead and press play, and let me see how it looks.
This is why most people are losers. You know why?
Oh.
They're losers because they're not in touch with themselves. They're in touch with airy-fairy conclusions, rescue stations, rescuing themselves from events and situations, and they're frightened, as she says, of showing off. They get too easily humiliated, so they go hiding. They get too easily embarrassed. They want something, someone says no, so they don't ask again. Most people don't ask for what they want. Do you know that? Do you hear that directly?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a point we can talk about right there. So most people don't ask for what they want. Do you guys have experiences where you, like, of that, of not asking for what you want, of this manipulation?
Yeah. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah. Growing up, I mean, in every situation in school, I was always present everywhere as far as that. In a lot of my life. And the bizarre bodily discomfort around that became evident once I started doing this work consistently. So yeah, myself, I can speak for it, no doubt. And that changed and saved so much effort and striving for what I would define as useless shit now. Just awesome to just ask for what you want. What's the worst you're gonna hear? No? Okay, great. Continue on.
And it's funny, how can people be authentic with you if you can't even be authentic with them? And then you're wrapped up in all this tension when you're just playing this game of what you're doing, things you think they want. and you're coming at each other from a totally inauthentic place, nobody's happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be something extremely simple too. Even like while you're traveling, asking for help or asking where something is, really basic stuff. Trying to think of some examples in my life, but yeah, a lot of people will guys especially with the dating kind of thing, although I don't really agree with a lot of the modern dating, whatever the hell that is, scene, but like guys just won't say, hey, let's go and have a fun time and go to the river or whatever it is, or hey, do you want to come to my house, or hey, whatever, they just won't ask. They'll just kind of like wait for things to happen, and they'll have that want, but they won't express it at all, and the woman's kind of like waiting around for something to happen as well, or doesn't even know, that the guy has that intentions or that he likes her or whatever. And people assume that everyone knows what's going on, or that people understand what's going on. But yeah, that's a big one, not asking for what you want. And then, yeah, it's kind of frustrating being on the other side of that. If people want something from you, but they're not being direct about it. I always have to, every time on the streams, I have to ban one of these. It's funny, girls4.x. I'm not going to say their website because I'm going to ban them now. But yeah, block user, there we go. It's probably a bot. Okay. So yeah. Yeah, it's a huge deal. And it's funny because I got to be working with Dr. Hyatt, and it was kind of a fun story. This was back when I was in the occult days, which I'm long since far away from, and have mostly rejected that world. But I wanted to buy this book, The Complete Golden Dawn System of Magic, which they had like 20 leather-bound, or no, they had 20 copies that were like slightly damaged or something was off about them. And it's this big, thick book, like that maybe. And they had one remaining leather-bound copy signed by Hyatt and Rigardi and stuff. And one of the 20 people who bought the remainder damaged copies would be drawn, would be in a drawing to receive the leather-bound signed edition. And I wrote him an email saying, hey, I just bought one of the copies. Just send me the leather-bound one. Nobody's going to know anyway. And then he wrote back an email saying, well, then I would be accused of the greatest crime in the New Age turnip garden, that of unfairness. And then like 3 weeks later, I received the leather-bound copy, And this was before working with him directly. So I had learned, to just ask for what I wanted. And that lesson then was delivered more and more and more over time. But then the way I got to be involved with the DVDs was just by asking, I wasn't asked at first. I was later asked to finish the DVD series. But at that time I just wrote and said, hey, I'd like to come early, and are you guys doing some DVDs? I'd like to be in the DVDs and do that work. And then he's like, okay, come down, go to this hotel. It's all set up, So if I hadn't asked, it never would have existed. And a lot of people don't realize that. Like especially trying to contact like authors or musicians, like we talked about before, authors or musicians or people that you look up to, people kind of think that it's hard to contact them, and maybe it is sometimes, but most folks never actually try. So you might find that it's easy to get in touch with these types of people. I met a lot of authors that I wanted to meet, and got in touch with a lot of different people. And sometimes I found that I had nothing to say. Like I really admired them and their work, and then I wanted to talk to them for some reason. And then when I had the chance to actually talk to them, I was kind of like, yeah, your work's awesome, but nothing. There was no other purpose. Like I realized, oh, this is just a person. Like I don't really have anything to do with them, But other times I wanted to work with them on something. So nice to have that in mind. All right, let's press play and watch a little bit more here.
They don't do it. They won't do it. They will spend days and weeks and hours manipulating so they don't have to be vulnerable to themselves. So someone says, I want this, and I say, no, I'm sorry, I don't want to give this to you. That's a small feeling. But by not doing that, you make yourself weak. Weak and weak. Yeah, if you really are there, then everything is clear. If you're full of conclusions, interpretations, wishes, hopes, and beliefs, then you don't know what's really going on around you, or you're in a daydream. This is why in the Zendos, what did the Zen master do all the time?
Whack people on the head.
Whack people on the head. Why did he do that?
Bring them back to the moment.
Bring them back, because where were they?
Off fantasizing.
Off fantasizing. Off in daydreams. And you remember what often Gurdjieff would do when people would come in? It was for work. He would ask them, has everyone shit today? And what was he really saying?
You emptied yourself out.
Have you emptied yourself out? Or are you coming here with all your daydreams again? All your fantasies, your mommy and your daddy, and are you real yet? Remember one of the names of one of the titles of his book? Life is what? Real?
Only then when I am.
When I am. Okay. So, it's getting people out of the daydream and getting them back to themselves, the way they were, and trusting their natural abilities to sense and feel what's going on around them.
So yeah, I like that segue at the end there. So trusting your natural abilities, your natural ability to sense and feel what's going on around you. Yeah.
And it's all there. You just strip away all those ideas. It's funny how abstractions kind of get in the way of life.
Yeah, go on, elaborate on that a little bit, Mark.
Well, I've noticed in my own, if I have too many ideas about a situation, like going to a party or hanging out with friends, nothing seems to work right. And when I'm able to just stay present and have less thoughts about what's going on, everything works better. I'm not putting this yoke on somebody else where I'm expecting them to be the person they were yesterday or what I want them to be.
Right, or the situation, right? So if you have a big idea about the situation, and that could be positive or negative, right? Though I don't even like those terms are so misused. But you could have a positive expectation, like, oh, this is going to be so amazing, but it's like a whole structure of how it's going to go, and then it could be totally different than that. I know for me in the past that I would be all frustrated and upset, you know.
That it doesn't go the way that you thought about, then it's like, oh, this is bad. Well, no, it's just something different.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, it's like you're carrying a set of standards and then, or a set of ideas and then expectations and comparing those in real time to what's going on. And then finding what's really going on to be lacking because it doesn't meet up with that.
And a lot of times you've missed what's in front of you, especially if you're not present. You have all these ideas. You're not present there. A new situation can open up where you can have even a better time.
Yeah, exactly. And you can like be there for it. You know, you can show up. Like that mentalist quote I've repeated a million times. If you could stop seeing the world in terms of your likes and dislikes and start seeing things as they are in themselves, you'd have a great deal more peace in your life. So you're not forever.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Mark.
And all those likes and dislikes, and coming back to undoing, seem to turn back into bodily tension, which comes back to all the exercises and why it's so important to be relaxed.
Yeah, I would say the expectations are a form of tension, definitely. It's like whenever the mind is not present where the body is, there's some amount of tension going on in order to keep that, keep the mind suspended elsewhere. Not sure how that exactly crosses over, but there's those early experiments with the undoing. And I often thought I should have everybody do these, because in the original undoing book, they had these experiments that were leading you up to doing the face stretches and then some of the body movements. And then those were leading you up to doing the lay down stuff. Now, of course, it was a book, so it didn't have the luxury of like video or a teacher in person where you can accelerate things. But those two experiments, you're supposed to lay down for 15 minutes, set a timer, and then just observe your thoughts and your body. And then think a bunch of happy thoughts and observe the body. Think a bunch of angry thoughts and observe the body. And it was to make you aware that the thoughts and tension are always present at the same time. Whenever that every thought had this component in the chronic tensions or the tensions in the body. So that was the beginning. And then from that, you're building on that experience by then breaking apart tensions and observing thoughts and doing the sense and feel and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a great experiment. Anyone watching or listening can try that out. It's pretty simple. You might not. I think the first one I was kind of like, maybe I didn't quite get it, but you're dealing with like layers and layers of abstraction when you first get involved with this kind of work. Usually, like if you've lived your whole life, or most of your life, because when you're a kid, generally, then your mind and body are in the same place and you're exploring. And don't bring a bunch of expectations. Of course, that gets thwarted pretty quick, but then, so you've been going since like age 5 or 8 or whatever, with abstractions and expectations and ideas about yourself and other people and situations and everything in the situations. So then if we start having a discussion about some of these topics, for some people, it will all be in that land of abstraction, that land of words. It won't be grounded in any direct experience.
And even school kind of,
yeah. So go ahead.
Any of the experiments that Garrett mentions here, don't just think about them. Do them.
Yeah.
Actually do it.
And we had mentioned Robert Anton Wilson earlier, and I realized I think I found my way to Hyatt through Robert Anton Wilson. I'm not 100% certain on that because I was reading so many books at the time that I know he mentioned him a few times, but I may have just gotten into Falcon publications in general from Wilson and then just started looking at all the Falcon titles. So I read a bunch of Hyatt's occult stuff. And then led toward the undoing stuff, like the Tree of Lies or the To Lie Is Human, the new title, or so those had experiments too, not necessarily with the body stuff, but very useful experiments anyway, and cognitive kind of experiments. But I had met lots of people who there were many people who had the Hyatt books, and some had the DVDs, and at that time I was given tons of sessions for free because I was just learning it, and I would ask people when they had, and I gave the book to lots of people too. I bought tons of copies, and I had asked people like, "Did you ever do the exercises in there?" And almost all of them said, "Oh yeah, I was going to," and almost none of them ever did. And even at the 2 workshops I went to, the first workshop, I think there was 16 or 17 people there, and I believe only 2 of us had done even one of the exercises in the book. So people were coming like for his personality or for his prior books, even though the workshop was about the Radical Undoing, about the body stuff. So only 2 people had ever done any of the exercises. And then I brought up Wilson because specifically 2 of his books, Prometheus Rising and quantum psychology. Are there quantum psychology is for a group, and Prometheus Rising is for the individual mainly. So it's solo exercises, but they're books of exercises, you know. And I met a lot of people who had those books, and very, very, very rarely did I ever meet anyone who had done any of those exercises. And some people even went as far as saying, oh yeah, but I read it and I understood what the exercise was about. But those exercises particularly, and I believe I did most of them out of Prometheus Rising and all of them out of quantum psychology. And man, it's nightmarish trying to get a group together for like I think it was 23 weeks in a row, or 27, I can't remember. Probably 23 since it's Wilson, but we did, and it was pretty amazing. And what I realized first about Prometheus Rising was whatever I thought about the exercise, when I actually did it, it was totally different. Like my perception of what he had written in the chapters was different. And I believe in one of the chapters, he tells you to go take martial arts for like 6 months or something, and then come back and read that chapter. And he's saying like the chapter is going to be very different for you once you go through that. And I had the luxury of doing the Jeet Kune Do and jiu-jitsu training at that time, so then I went back to the book, and it was like, man, in real time. And then he and Hyatt were both aware of the somewhat Sufi traditions and some of the stuff that Gurdjieff was teaching about. I guess Gurdjieff was around in not only the Sufi stuff but also orthodoxy. But some of the Sufis would, and I read this in Idris Shah, but they would buy 20 copies of a book, let's say. And this was back when books were more of a precious commodity. And the Westerners couldn't understand why the Sufis would do that. Why would they buy 20 copies of a book? And then when they were amazed or found a certain passage like exciting, they would just block it out with black marker. And then they would read the next copy and then block out when they were amazed or whatever with the different parts of it. And then they would compare from the first copy down through the 5th, 10th, 20th to see what they had learned, or see if they were advancing or not.
Oh, interesting.
So I think, and I know Wilson was aware of that level of study, and so was Hyatt. They were both deep in the Gurdjieff stuff and all that. And like with the undoing bodywork, you got to do the exercises over and over and over again. It's the same exercise, although it is different every time, because if you're present, then it's everything is new at all times. Even if you eat the same meal every single week, the same meal every Sunday or something like that, if you're present, it's going to be a different thing every time. You're going to be present. You're going to enjoy it. It's not going to be. You won't fall asleep to what's going on. The same goes for the exercises, for the breathing, for the people in your life, for the situations and all that.
Yeah, and that way it's almost similar to a martial art. Like, it requires that repetition. Isn't there that Bruce Lee quote? He said something to the effect of, "I'm not scared of the man who knows 1,000 different punches. I'm scared of the guy who practices one punch 1,000 times."
Yeah. Yeah, and then even in jiu-jitsu, when you get to the black belt level of stuff, you go back to doing the white belt stuff again and again and again and again. Just the basics over and over and over, and mastering them from a new perspective. I guess that kind of leans in a little bit to what you were asking about, Tyler, like people that have been, like the effects with the undoing, or I guess you were asking more like what happens in people's lives after they've been going at it for like 10 years, or how does their life unfold after they've had this undoing experience. Yeah. And like I said, kind of jokingly, but a lot of people do. A lot of clients of mine have ended up in being somewhat devout members of the Eastern Orthodox Christianity, which I found kind of fascinating. I've been attending an Eastern Orthodox church lately, just the last 4 weeks, and I really, really enjoy it for a number of reasons. So that's one thing where people end up.
That's quite interesting to me, especially some of the roots with finding Hyatt and the occult stuff, and then it comes out in this totally different fashion. Do you have any theories on to why that is?
I don't. Yeah, I've thought of that. a lot. And, well, I'd say specifically in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, logic and reason are a big part of it. You know, and that's fascinating to me, watching like that Made by Jim Bob YouTube stream. If you paid attention to him, he's that guy that does those memes and stuff, those cartoons that are hilarious, the political ones. And he's going into orthodoxy to some degree. And then people like Jay Dyer and others on YouTube, people might have heard of these guys. What occurred to me was that I saw them debating various aspects of atheism. And what kind of blew my mind was they would debate the atheists about naturalistic worldviews, meaning that the world that the world started with the Big Bang and it's just a mechanism. But then he would defeat their arguments by saying, like, well, you can't really make any truth claims or come up with any oughts, like that you ought to live a certain way based on atheism or naturalism. There's no grounding of the morality. Get out of here, kitty. So that it's an ungrounded and unreasonable worldview, that it's self-refuting. Like to make a claim, there's no truth. You know, you're making a truth claim. You're using meaning. You're using metaphysics because you're using language. So then you're stuck with, well, how do we know what we know? So epistemology, and then where does a sense of morality come from? And it can't be something like relativism, because then you end up you could say, okay, well, somebody else can be a child molester or a murderer or whatever because they want to. You know what I mean? So it can't be based on wants or whims. So where does morality, where do the rules of, like, where does logic come from? Where does the drive toward truth come from? So in an Orthodox Christian worldview, those things come from God, that you're created with this drive towards those, with a conscience, with some sense of morality, that it wasn't just invented by humans. So that kind of blew my mind, that logic itself would lead you to, and if you're being honest, you would lead you to God. So due to that, then with the undoing, for me, like, I was into all this occult stuff and all this, all these different, new agey stuff. Not so much the fluffy end of that, but like stuff that seemed legit to me at the time, like different types of meditation and practices and whatever. And then when I did the undoing, breathing and the body movements and all that stuff, that other life of mine just kind of shriveled up and died. It just went away. And I couldn't stay with it any longer. I was like, this is so weird. I didn't know why I was doing it any longer. And most of it was just garbage. It was just bullshit. And I could see how and why it was bullshit, Like, I could see that these worldviews were not grounded in anything at all, like doing these spells and fortune telling or going to psychics and all this kind of stuff. It just could see, like, well, where's that power coming from? How is this actually like a coherent worldview? So with the undoing, I think it destroys or makes you aware of incoherent worldviews, because to maintain those lies in your mind then requires tension in the body. You see what I mean? To maintain lies in the mind, it takes effort because it's untrue. So you're having to do work to maintain the lie. You don't have to do work to maintain the truth. It's the same if you think of it like lying to another person. Now you have to do work to maintain that lie. It will cause tension in you around that person. But if you're telling the truth, then there's no work to maintain that. So that's, to me, one speculation about how and why it would lead people to some sense of Christianity and God. And not everybody went to the Orthodox direction. That's fascinating to me, and it has such a rich tradition. And I'm kind of a fan of tradition at this point. Even things like American Thanksgiving, I love, and Christmas, even like the consumerist part of Christmas, I actually love. I grew up in that. There's something beautiful about it, that people are who even sometimes are usually tight with their money are spending, you know, they're putting lights up, they're spending on their electrical bill. And even when there's so-called, when everybody thinks there's some bad economy going on, you look around, there's still presents under the trees, there's Christmas lights, there's Christmas trees going on, you know, there's some kind of an expression of this abundance that transcends just the capitalistic aspect of it. So I find that kind of fascinating. But yeah, so tradition and the orthodoxy, to me, maintains like a pretty solid tradition. There's a lot of writings, a lot of saints, and a lot of things you can look to for guidance in there. But yeah, there is, I guess there's like maybe a seeming conflict. Like I said, Hyatt went to a great degree to bash, you know, organized religion, which is pretty easy to bash. You know, there's a lot of downsides to it, like especially I think in Catholicism and like the church scandals and all that. And even some Orthodox churches have their own political things that occurred. But yeah, if you're pursuing that quest with logic and honesty and reason, then that's different than, say, just believing in the way that I think Hyatt was attacking. You know, I think that should be attacked. This accepting things without any questioning on your own, without any direct experience. You know.
And I'm sure a few of those religions started out as something beautiful and true, and then over time, the rot came in and they became less than what they were.
Yeah, there needs to be some kind of living tradition, you know, involved in it, rather than just a husk or a shell. It would be like if we just always just talked about Hyatt and quoted him, but never did any of the undoing work, you know. Like, what would we be? Where would we get with that? You know what I mean? There has to be something you can test for yourself. Even in even in the Orthodox religion, there's some ways of prayer and the idea of doing this prayer without ceasing, being always aware in a specific way, realizing that you are nothing, that you're made of nothing. You're made of dust, you know, and that when you die, I like this quote, when you die, they'll make walls out of you again, you know, that you're just nothing, but there's this breath of life in us. There's this breath of God animating us in life. So even though we're made of dust, we're made of out of the earth, then there's this spark of the Holy Spirit or whatever it is within us. There's some interesting quotes here in the let's see, he's in the chat. Jonah, who's on the sessions with us sometimes, he's stuck in traffic, stoked to see this interview. He also said, great question mark about the why would it lead people to the orthodoxy. Eric, this is a little bit of a non sequitur, but I think maybe we can answer this, and then we'll have to go because I got to jump on one of the other groups. But Eric says, recommendations for regressed adult abused in childhood, weaning off a benzodiazepine, I guess. This is a really difficult spot. Nervous system in chaos, feels dangerous. Emotional flashback for years. So, you know, there's a bunch of stuff I guess I could say about that, but I really hesitate to do so unless I talk to you directly. You know what I mean? Because then I can see the body, I can hear the voice, I can know the situation, like where you're living, who you're living with, what's going on. But I will say, you know, do the basic stuff you can find on the Radical Undoing YouTube, you know, like the playlist there, face stretches, shoulders, the laughing breath, and do like copious amounts of those. That's going to go a long way for whatever situation you're in. But the issue there is you're going to start feeling more aliveness, and the reason for a lot of times the reason people end up taking like the especially the psychiatric type of, no, the cat's turning on the printer. Get out of here! Get out of here! Get out! It's actually printing something now. Turn it off. Blank page. So anyway, the reason people take a lot of those types of things is because they somehow have a fear of feeling totally alive. You know, there's some kind of reaction to intense sensations, let's say. Okay, now I'm turn this off.
And just with the undoing work, even the awe breathing, you can undo a lot of chronic tension in your breath. Like most people tend to breathe in their chest area instead of their belly, and that'll take you light years ahead of using substances to try to artificially get that relaxation.
Yeah, and that's what the substances generally do. They force a little bit of relaxation, get you out of your head. Even though you remain lost, but they get you out of your head in some ways, or kind of numb you to what's going on. So the doing the undoing work and the breathing and all that stuff is going to make you feel everything more intensely, but it will also raise your frustration and anxiety tolerance. So you'll be able to handle a lot more intensity without any bad reactions to it, without any overreactions. But what you need to see, and also just doing the fake meditation, the silent presence, whatever, I might make that public on the YouTube channel actually. Maybe I'll do that right now and post a link in there, because I think people need that. Let's see here, your videos. Yeah, let's just, and maybe we'll do it on a stream too. I did it on a couple of the streams already. Silent presence. That's a 28-minute one, so you're gonna have to sit and suffer. But some of it's introduction, so once you know. Oh, so there we go. But yeah, Eric, since you asked, I'll post this in the chat. I don't know if you can see it there on YouTube. I think you can. And then I made it. Oh, I didn't make it public yet, but that's unlisted. So let's go ahead and make it public and see what happens. Edit. I'm gonna go public. Done. Save. Okay, yeah. So that's, I'd recommend that, sitting still each day. Each morning when you wake up, each night before you go to bed, just sit there, and then there's a specific way of doing that, like of observing, of keeping your mind where your body is. And when you practice at that over time, at first you might have to sit there while things are going on that you don't like. But you'll start to realize that none of those are really going to hurt you. So like you said, feels dangerous. But if you're sitting and watching this YouTube video right now, the chances are that you're not really in a survival situation, for example. And it can help to, go ahead.
It might feel like a tiger's going to attack you out of the woods, but
yeah,
there's no tiger. Oh, never mind.
It's just a cat. Yeah, it's just a kitty cat. Hey, what's going on? So yeah, and Eric, I recommend keep checking in, subscribe, and put on the notifications, and then we can get into this deeper on another stream. It's probably something a lot of people are suffering from. And keep in mind, on the inside, these demons, this whole, all these issues seem like they seem real. They really will feel and seem and sound real and scary and intense. But once you've seen that they can't hurt you, or even if you write them down or you see those thoughts or you express them, you'll realize that when you can just observe the thoughts and not react, then you'll see that they don't really have any power over you. But your identity is currently probably locked in with those things. There'll be a time, if you keep going in your life, where your identity won't be aligned with your personal history, or what I call the historic personality. Your identity will be with what's actually going on right here and now. You know what I mean? It will be, your identity will be on presence, awareness, the observer of what's happening, rather than
free to drop all that baggage.
And he says, I've done this ... meditation for you as well. I don't know what you've done, but I say that it's easy to get lost, and a ton of people do a ton of shit around meditation, so-called meditation. I don't even really use the word because it's so abused, and a lot of people then get caught up in the thoughts thinking they're doing it wrong, and that's another trap. So you need to watch those thoughts and just not, and if the thoughts are going, oh, I'm doing this wrong, then you just watch those too. See, that's a trap. oh, I'm doing this wrong. Just that's another thought. So you just watch it. There's no real way to do it wrong. You just get better and better at it. But you're just like, it's just like watching a movie. And sometimes you get lost while you're watching a movie, and then you become aware again that you're there watching the movie. Maybe you start thinking about something else, but then you just start watching the movie again. It's the same with this fake meditation or silent presence, you know. So I'd set aside any ideas you have about it. But what I was going to say is not only do that, but before you do it, do the face stretches, do the shoulders to ears exercise, do the laughing breath, the flops, whatever else you want to do that you see there. If you have panic attacks, so-called panic attacks, for that, do the gag reflex. And I do have videos on that too. I think they're out there somewhere. But you can do that in the shower every day. And you want to not throw up. It's okay if you throw up, but it's not the goal. But you drink some water and then you breathe a little bit, gag, do one gag with your hands, then take a few breaths and feel what happened, do another one, and do like 4 or 5 that way in the shower every day. That's going to do, like what Mark said, it's going to slam your diaphragm open and make it so the breathing starts taking place in the belly again, in the belly and the chest, rather than pulling up like that, you know. And then, of course, there's obviously the Radical Undoing sessions and all that kind of thing. If you're around in Florida or in Canada, you know, Canada's a small place. So if you're if you're near Edmonton, anywhere in Canada, Mark's willing to drive. No, in Edmonton, then, you know, you can seek out these guys and do some sessions. You could join us on the weekly sessions, you know. I can't make, you know, public claims about curing any of this kind of stuff, so I won't do that, but I can tell you that people that I've worked with in the past have. Oh, you're in Florida. Okay, so, you know, check with Tyler. Right now you can reach him at tylerundoing@gmail.com. We do have Tyler at radicalundoing.com, but we were going to do that today. We haven't got those emails set up, so it's not actually delivering somewhere yet. It'll work, but just write tylerundoing@gmail.com and see if you're somewhere near where Tyler is, and maybe you can work with him then. That would be pretty cool. It'd be nice for you to do it in person at first, at least.
Yeah. Let's get in touch. Definitely reach out, and we'll figure out a way to get to it.
Yeah, so that would be cool. You know, and maybe you guys can do a walk or something on the water afterward. It's always nice. So, all right. Well, I've already gone 11 minutes over, but this was awesome. Time goes so fast, and I feel like we just barely got into it. But Mark and Tyler, whenever you guys want, let's keep doing this. And we have a whole list of stuff, right? Like we have a whole spreadsheet full of. Yeah, Eric, and it's also kind of a fun adventure if you travel. So I should put these on. I'm talking to him like as if you guys can see it. But he said in Florida, and then he said, we'll travel. Thank you. So it you know, if you go out of your way to seek out peace, inner peace, you know, if you try to like get real with yourself, like, okay, I'm gonna do something about this. That goes a long way, you know. It really can be a fun adventure, not just going to Disneyland or whatever, but like to go on a trip like that, meet Tyler, you know, rent yourself a nice little place for a couple days, do some of the undoing, have Tyler come up with, you know, a specific kind of daily routine for you. That could be really cool. Because, you know, and then Tyler, you can also give him different stuff, you know, whatever. You'll think of it at the time, but like, you know, some of the adventures from the intensives, you know what I mean? Or that spirit, maybe you could come up with that stuff on your own now too, but like, you know what I mean? Something where you put this into action, not just the body movements, breathing stuff is amazing on its own, but also, you know, like write a letter to yourself from the future, from at least 100 years from now. What would you want yourself to know now? From the future, and then mail it to yourself, open it up. So, you know, you guys know what I mean, but include that when you guys work with people as well. Like, you'll start having those ideas, and or we can always discuss, but I find that adjunct to it makes a huge difference, you know. Or you ask people, like, do you do any art? Do you do any music? And then if they don't, did you ever? And almost always there'll be something like, well, I used to paint, but then or I used to draw, or I always wanted to do guitar. Okay, then tell them, get the guitar, find some links for them, you know what I mean? Get them going. on that stuff at the same time as doing the undoing. You know what I mean? It starts to bring it into the flow of daily life. So, yeah, cool. And Eric, keep in touch. Let us know if you do that. And I was going to say, if you want to jump on a stream with us, then we can like do some of the next time we can do some of the exercises in real time or whatever, and find out what's going on for you. And thanks for being honest, you know, reaching out and saying what's going on for you. That helps too. Kitty is going crazy here. All right, I got to get going, jump on the other group. But you guys message me. We can do next Sunday if you guys can as well. But if there's time in between and you want to jump on, just send me a message. We can do that too.
Absolutely.
It'd be fun. Cool. All right, I'm gonna end the broadcast. So see you all later. Have fun and keep on doing.
All right. Guys.